Hello, my name is Mariana De Luca. I am an ELL resource teacher in the English Language Learner Services Department, and today I'm going to talk about how the first language can be used in the classroom. The use of the home language with English language learners has always been a controversial issue. The urgent need for English language learners to learn the language they need to be successful in school has led teachers and administrators to take an only English approach. The last decade of research in this field has shown that the use of the first language can function as a cognitive tool to learn the second language, and in fact, it can be the only way students access the rigorous content of the Common Core standards. For this reason, many bilingual education as well as ESL programs are creating opportunities for students to use their entire linguistic repertoire in a complementary way. So why is it important to use the first language in the classroom? Well, if we don't, we're restricting the possibilities for our English language learners, because the two languages are interwoven in their brains anyway. And the second language is restricted not only in conversational topics, but in any sort of communication. On the other hand, the bilingual strategies can promote English language acquisition by literacy development, identities of competence, and collaboration between majority and minority groups. Ofelia Garcia uses the term translanguaging to refer to the dynamic use of language bilingual or multilingual people engage in. For example, most likely you have heard your students switch from one language to another when talking to another bilingual people or when interpreting for someone. They may listen in one language and respond in a different one. These are practices that bilingual or multilingual people use to make meaning of the world and communicate. These same practices can be used to help facilitate more effective learning of content and language for our English language learners. So who can use these translanguaging strategies? If we say that we can use these practices as pedagogical strategies, does it mean that we need to speak the student's home language? No, not necessarily. All educators can use translanguaging strategies. For example, bilingual teachers can switch languages strategically. That is, to explain something that is important, to build background knowledge, to teach new words, or just to translate something that the students did not understand. Whereas a monolingual teacher can also use translanguaging strategies to provide opportunities for their students to engage with their home language. So, for example, a teacher that doesn't speak the language can provide texts or online resources in their home languages. The teacher can also allow students to have discussions in their home language, encourage students to use bilingual dictionaries, or using Google Translate to teach key terms. I am going to share with you some great ideas for translanguaging practices. In 2011, the City University of New York, as part of a bilingual initiative, published a guide for teachers and administrators to provide translanguaging strategies that would help schools and students move towards their goals. The authors have organized this guide in 3 categories and provided examples of translanguaging strategies for each of them. You can see the categories on that organizer. The classroom sets the context and the stage for translanguaging work. Translanguaging strategies can be used to aid in the learning of rigorous academic content and the development of literacy. And it can also shift attention to specific aspects of language to foster its development. So let's have a look at the first one. How can we create a translanguaging classroom? Well, a teacher can do this by bringing to the classroom culturally relevant texts. When students read texts that they can connect to, that are culturally relevant to them, their reading proficiency is greater and they are more engaged. They can use their background knowledge to comprehend. A teacher can also allow students to write bilingual versions of their writings, and these are defined by some authors as identity texts. So a student can work with a peer to help in the translation of their home language writing. A teacher can also create an environment that welcomes other languages by having posters in the walls with English and the students' home language side by side, vocabulary walls in multiple languages, labels of different things in the classroom in different languages. Students can examine what different languages there are in their community as well. They can collect brochures, newspapers, take pictures of signs, make notes of people talking a different language, bring songs in different languages. This brings awareness among the students about all the other languages that are being used in the community. Last but not least, a teacher can integrate or use an approach of integrated instruction, that is providing ways for students to do some speaking, reading, and writing in their home languages as well as in English. Let's pause for a moment and consider the following scenario. Let's think about a science class. How can a teacher make a class on ecosystems culturally relevant? Take a few seconds to choose your answer. So, we have looked at ways of building a classroom that welcomes translanguaging. Now, let's have a look at the content and literacy. How can we use these strategies to build content and to build literacy? Well, a teacher can choose to preview a new topic or review a topic that has already been taught in the student's home language. If the teacher is not bilingual, the teacher can use other resources so that the students have opportunities to do this in their home language. Students can use their peers. They can share their own background knowledge on a topic by discussing it with their peers in their home languages. The teacher can also find a staff member that speaks that language. The staff member can come and talk briefly about an upcoming topic. The teacher can encourage family members to talk with the students about a particular topic. The teacher can also provide texts in students' home languages about topics they will encounter in English. The teacher can use videos or other media sources in their home languages as well. Providing opportunities for multilingual research is another strategy that can be used, using multilingual resources or conducting interviews in their home language. We can also pair bilingual speakers with English speakers. Teachers many times tend to group students according to language, but if we give them opportunities to use their linguistic repertoire with other students that speak other languages, all the students benefit from this experience. Another strategy can be bringing multilingual text to the classroom on one content area topic. This is an example of a teacher that launched a unit of study during a reading workshop. The teacher grouped students by home language, French, Spanish, or English, and gave each group an informational text about Asia in that language. She asked students to read their text independently or with a partner in the cases where students did not have strong literacy skills in the home language or in English. While reading, students took notes in a T-chart to record details they were learning about. At the end of the reading workshop, the teacher did a jigsaw share where each group had representatives from each home language. In English, students took turns sharing with their group what they had learned from their respective texts about geography and culture in Asia. I know that to find text in other languages might be very difficult. A to Z readers has some sources or some resources in Spanish and French, but it doesn't have to be a book. It can be a passage from online resources as well. Another strategy can be responding to reading in writing. For example, a student can write a sentence in English that summarizes the main idea, followed by a more elaborate response in the home language. A student can copy a portion of the text that they have read in English and then write thoughts in home language. A student can illustrate what happened in the text, label in English, and then elaborate more in their home language. So let's pause again and reflect on what we have talked about. So far, we have seen translanguaging in the classroom, creating a classroom that welcomes translanguaging. And we have also seen ideas, translanguaging ideas to develop content and literacy. Now we will look into translanguaging to promote language development. So we can use these strategies to develop vocabulary. Some of these strategies are using multilingual word walls, word and definitions in the student's home language, using cognate charts, multilingual Freyer models, and multilingual four-box graphic organizers. We can also create or develop syntax awareness by using bilingual or multilingual model sentences, and also by conferring about syntax transfer with students, that is, discussing with them how do we write a sentence in their home language, how is it done in English, and kind of compare the structures. So here you can see an example of multilingual word wall. You can see that there are words in English and in French. There are pictures and there are also examples, and the other has English and Spanish. Another example for math. Showing multiple languages is also important as students see connections among their languages, as seen in this sample chart. Teaching students the links between different languages, roots, and affixes will help them in all of their content areas, as well as in future reading. By giving students the tools to figure out new vocabulary, you're enabling them to understand future as well as current vocabulary. Many languages share common word parts. So for example, here, this is a cognate chart, an example of a cognate chart. And the teacher used this to teach roots, the meaning of that root and the origin of the word, and providing examples in English and in Spanish. Now, if the student learns about that root or a root of a word, when they see them again in a new word, they can guess the meaning. More examples of content area cognates. Here you can see a chart that has one word in different languages, so students can see the similarities and differences, and also distance terms in English and Spanish. On this chart, the teacher helped students highlight the ones that were cognates. They left blank the words that were completely different in each language. They also highlighted the words that had some similarities, such as beginning with the same letter. The teacher had students help her add images to the words to help students read the new vocabulary. We can see this here. This is an example of a four-box organizer, again in multiple languages with some visual aids, examples of the vocabulary in context, and the definition. And this is an example of a Freyer model, also in multiple languages. This is another example, and here only the key term is translated into the student's home language. The rest is supported by visuals and the simplified form of English. One more example. Okay, so all these slides showed examples of translanguaging strategies to develop vocabulary. Let's have a look now at how we can use translanguaging to promote syntax awareness. So a teacher may want to find or create a model sentence in English that illustrates a grammatical component that needs to be taught. In this example, it's going to be a nominal phrase. So, a teacher will need to take out that grammatical component to make it a more basic sentence, representative of what students are able to write. So this means that you will have two model sentences. The basic one you show students first, and the more elaborate one you build with the students. Instead of showing students the model sentences only in English, you can display it side by side with the translation in the student's home language. Have a translation for both the basic sentence you start with and the more elaborate sentence that you build with the students. To have your English sentence translated into your student's home language, you can use an online translator such as Google Translate. For authentic sources of bilingual sentences, pull one from a bilingual text, such as bilingual children's literature, a bilingual trade book, a bilingual textbook, or a bilingual website. Model how to build a more complex sentence. If you have the basic sentence written on a sentence strip or other piece of paper, a great way to model how to alter the sentence is to physically cut it in the place where you want to add in more words. Push the two pieces apart and place the new words in the empty space. This is particularly helpful for elementary age students, so they can see how the revision works. You can also display the sentences digitally and type in the words as you add to the sentence. So here we have an example of a basic sentence in English and then in Spanish. And here we have an example of how the teacher adds complexity to the sentence by extending the nominal phrase. And again, we have an example for each sentence in English and in Spanish. So we have covered a few strategies to develop vocabulary and promote syntax awareness. Now, let's pause once again and take a few seconds to decide if the following statements are true or false. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you can use some of these strategies in your classroom and encourage students to use their home language. It helps them not only to learn content and English, but it also to develop an identity and reinforce their identities. Remember, their first language can function as a stepping stone to scaffold more accomplished performance in their second language. If you would like to have more strategies for translanguaging in the classroom, please visit this website. This is the guide published by the New York University. And here are my references if you wish to read more about translanguaging or using the first language in the classroom. Thank you again.